Hello there everybody, Sam Strange here, welcome back to the Railway and welcome to yet another edition of Model Railway News, this time for June. So over the last month or so there has been quite a lot of news, there's been quite a few different developments, one or two very sad and quite sombering things that have happened, all of which we will get to, but I thought I would start off with something a little bit more positive. So, as I often do, I am going to start with Hornby, who have just made their mid-year range announcement, and there's quite a few new models on the way as a result of that mid-year range announcement. Not an awful lot in the way of new toolings, but still quite a few things I thought you might be interested in. So, you might not be surprised to hear this, but there are a few more Terriers on the way. So we have yet another in the improved engine green, that's Leadenhall, or Leadenhall I think it is. Apologies for my pronunciation, as you know I always struggle with those. And also there are a couple more southern green versions, as you can see here. So very nice that Hornby are expanding their Terrier range. Also, there's been a few sort of branded wagons announced, namely Coca-Cola branded wagons. As you can see here is a Coca-Cola tank wagon and also a Coca-Cola box van. Now, neither of those are sort of new models. They've been around for quite a while, but never, I think, in Coca-Cola livery, which is quite cool. And obviously that complements Hornby's Christmas Coca-Cola train set, which is also due for release reasonably soon, if that's still the case. There's also some other rolling stock as well, including this brand new set of Network Mark III measurement train coaches, which I think look quite cool in that yellow livery. And obviously that isn't all that Hornby have announced, there's quite a lot actually, so if you want to check out all of the new announced items, I will include a link in the description so that you can check them out sort of in your own time. And finally, on the subject of Hornby, I suppose I better do my mandatory Terrier announcement, because there is yet another Terrier being released by Hornby. This time I think it's the one that most people were waiting for. It is the Stepney model, of course, as you can see just here in the improved engine green, which is very, very impressive, and it's now out of stock on the Hornby website, so that is extremely quick, isn't it, that has sold out. If you want one of those, you'll have to go to the retailers, which generally sell them a little cheaper anyway. Okay, so next up, something a little bit interesting for you. It's an announcement based around Backman branch line, and a new model that they've just released. Now, it's a Backman Class 90, and you might be thinking, okay, so what's so interesting about that then? Well, it's a bit of a world's first, really. World's first, it sounds quite grand. But yeah, apparently this model, well, not apparently, it certainly does, this model actually has a DCC-operated pantograph, which means the pantograph, obviously the thing, the contraption on top of the model itself, which can pick up power from the overhead lines, actually is automated. There's a servo inside which allows it to automatically rise and fall as you sort of command it to on the DCC controller, and it's very, very cool. I think I've never seen that before, at least not in HO or 00 gauge, which is very, very impressive. The slight downside to that is that you do need a special decoder, because obviously most locos don't have this feature, and so most decoders are not equipped to deal with that. So you do need special decoders, which is a little bit sort of difficult, really, isn't it? It's sort of anti-consumer, but not really. It's kind of unavoidable. I don't know what they could have done other than just have sort of a hand-operated pantograph, which wouldn't be very cool at all. So I thought that was a mention. They are quite expensive things, but I hear that they're excellent models, and so that's probably justified, and features like that operating pantograph really must make it worth the money. So very, very fascinating, and I was definitely interested to see some videos of that. I think New Junction has done a video on it, so if you want to see it in action, I will include a link in the description. And now I'd like to talk about quite a devastating loss to the model railways hobby, hence the extreme close-up and the slightly unsettling expression on my face. And that is that from 2020, the government has announced that they indeed will be banning the use or sale, I think, of these cotton buds, plastic cotton buds. Now, you might think that's a little bit irrelevant, but if you're like me, you use these cotton buds in basically every aspect of your model railway. You know, I use these things for cleaning wheels, I use them for servicing, cleaning out motors, I use them for cleaning points, and sometimes even little bits of track work. They really are ingrained into every aspect of my model railway, and from 2020 it looks as though these will no longer be for sale. Now, it is important not to panic, right? Certainly don't go out and buy 50 packs of these things in a panic. That's certainly not what I've done, and I don't recommend that you do, because You might find that there are a few other alternatives. For example, you might even be able to buy them from China perhaps and import them, although, you know, if they are banned, that might make that a little bit difficult. And also, it's going to be expensive to ship them. However, there are alternatives. Apparently, there are bamboo cotton buds, which obviously are not made of plastic, so I don't think those will be banned. Although, of course, as bamboo and not plastic, I wonder if they will be quite expensive. So, yes, quite troubling times, really. I'm not really sure what's going to happen there. However, obviously, it's important to do your research and find out what else is out there before you go and spend an obscene amount of money on cotton buds. I certainly don't recommend you do that. Deep breaths. Okay, so if I can just be a little bit more serious for a second or two, there is a little bit more of a pressing matter to cover, something of a more substantial loss to the model railways community. So you might have heard this, you might have not, but there are multiple sources that confirm that DJM, or Dave Jones models, will be calling in the receiver this month, or in fact has called in the receiver. They've gone bust, and there will be no more models produced with immediate effect, I think. Apparently they've gone into voluntary liquidation. Now, if you've seen any of my models concerning DJ models or Dave Jones models, you might know what I thought about the ones at least that I experienced. I didn't find them to be much good, to be honest with you, and in fact, yeah, I found that the ones at least that I encountered were no good at all. I thought they were over-engineered, blah, 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 you know. And also, from what I've heard, there were serious issues on the business side of things. I don't want to get into it now, but mismanagement, you know, arguments with factories, products promised but not delivered. There's a whole list of things, but I didn't really want that to be the focus of today's coverage. First of all, because it's all out there. If you want to find out more about this, just look it up. You can read about all this stuff. But second of all, because it's really unimportant, isn't it? What's done is done, and it looks as though it's over. So, yeah, today I wanted to take just a slightly more personal and probably, dare I say it, a slightly more compassionate approach to this. Because DJM or Dave Jones, you know, whether you liked his products, whether you liked his business or not, you can't deny that he dedicated his life, or rather a portion of his life, into model railways and into producing models that he hoped people would like. And no doubt he spent an awful lot of time and an awful lot of money on his business and on these different projects. And it looks as though, you know, this month all of that is coming to an end. So, as I say, whatever you thought of him or his company, that, you know, it's difficult not to feel a little bit of compassion for that, because that's all come to an end this month. And it's also very, very possible that Dave will have lost everything. So, yeah, I think, you know, there are going to be some that are going to rub salt into the wound, and that's all right. You know, people are going to do that. But yeah, I think it's important just to feel for the guy who has lost everything, you know. So there's that. But obviously that's not the end of the story, because there are customers of DJM supporters that have put money up for the various promised models, which now will not be delivered. So, you know, there are some minor deposits put down, I think £30 for this and that model, which obviously is bad enough. You don't want to be losing any sorts of money like that. But then there are people that have put up much, much more. For example, the APT, I think there are people that have got hundreds and hundreds invested in DJM. And at the moment it's looking, you know, very uncertain whether or not they're actually going to see that money again. So there's compassion to be felt for those people as well. So it's a mess. It is a mess. If you're one of those people that may be losing out because of this, you know, I'm thinking about you. I'm sorry to hear it. And if you're not one of those people, then I'm sure you feel exactly the same way. Yeah. And I suppose we're all lucky, we're lucky that it isn't us. But yeah, once again, I don't think it's right to rub salt into the wound by saying, I told you so. That doesn't help anybody. And to be honest with you, in my opinion, even though I have the opinions, or I had the opinions that I did about DJM and his models, I think if he'd announced the right model, or the model that would have really captured my interest and made me desperate to buy the you know, the certain loco or whatever it was, I think that even I might have been tempted to put my deposit down and buy one. So in other words, it could easily have been me, and I'm sure there are a lot of you folks out there as well that that might feel the same. So it could easily have been us. So, you know, there's really no positive way to look at this thing. It's a loss, whether or not you like the company. So yeah, it's a big mess. It is a big mess. It looks like everybody's lost out, really. And I think any loss to the model railways hobby is a big loss, because, you know, it's quite a fragile thing. And yeah, it's sad news. I think it's sad news. So I'm sure everyone will be thinking about DJM, and there's no real way to send him your support. But yeah, I think it's important just to be gracious, you know, no matter what you thought. I am the last person to have, you know, sent any compliments Dave Jones's way. But yeah, I think in this situation, it's important to behave differently. And I'm sorry for being a bit preachy there, but genuinely, I felt quite upset about that. Okay, so now let's talk about something that's a little bit more light-hearted. It's all sort of on the subject of crowdfunding as well. Now, I'm going to show you something here. So it is this. Now, this is a GT3 gas turbine, and if you haven't been following the recent gas turbine project, you might be wondering, what on earth is that? Well, this is, I don't really know how to describe it other than a gas turbine, but obviously it's a very, very unconventional looking steam locomotive. Is it even a steam locomotive? It's that odd. In fact, it was a unique loco. There was only ever one built. And this has been on the cards for a little while. It's not sort of a brand new announcement, but it's a company called KR Models who are going to be producing this. Now, this was announced last year, I think it was, at Worley. It's a project. It is an independent project, and apparently now it's ready to move on to the next stage, and tooling is about to take place, hopefully in July. Now, it's a little bit of a risky project once again. Now, I must tell you that I have taken the risk and I have put down a deposit for one of these. So I know it's a little bit risky, and I'll tell you why in just a second, but for me, I thought, you know, this is my business, this is what I do, I like to look at brand new models, so if there's something unusual and something new coming out, it's worth me taking the risk. Whether you take the risk or not is up to you. Obviously, do your research, find out about the project, find out about KR Models, and make a decision based on that. So as I say, yeah, tiny bit risky, but also, as I say, I have made the investment and I've paid the first couple of deposits. So it is by KR Models. KR Models have never made any models before, which obviously to some people will be a bit of a concern, and if that's you, then that's absolutely fine. However, it is all looking good. They have shared some CAD images. Here those are now. Yes, looking quite good. Obviously, the CADs have all been completed now, presumably, because tooling's about to start. Now, the price for this, for the DCC ready version, is £185. Now, this is an independent project. I've talked to KR Models on Facebook, and they say that they will be doing this themselves. So I think £185 for a 460 steam locomotive, for want of a better term, doesn't sound too bad, I think, for such an independent project. And apparently the price of that will be going up as the project proceeds. So if you want to get a bargain, obviously I will include a link in the description. The DCC sound version is a little bit more expensive. I can't remember the price of that off the top of my head, but it is more expensive, as you'd expect. The first payment was £50, which isn't too bad, and then a second payment of £70. And if you want to get in on the project as a fresh, I think the first two payments will now be grouped together as a £120 payment, I think. As I say, yeah, apparently it's been, Keith says, Keith, the owner of KR Models, says it's ready to enter the tooling stage over the next month or so, and delivery is expected in Q2 2020, so not very long at all. I suppose that's assuming there is no problem in the production process, which obviously may be difficult to guarantee. But if that is true, and if it does come out in Q2 2020, that isn't an awful long while to wait. That's less than a year. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? Will you be getting one? Do you have any misgivings, or do you think it's a good project? As I say, I think it's a promising project, and I have put my money up for it, so just fingers crossed it gets made and that it's a decent model. Okay, so next up, quite an interesting and almost exciting new announcement from Halogen, even though I use the word exciting far too often, I know, and I'm sorry. Okay, so this brand new announcement is a new Class 45. Now, the Class 45 was a real classic diesel from the 1960s. They were passenger locos capable of pretty high speeds, up to 90 miles per hour, and apparently they had great acceleration as well, which made them just perfect for British passenger stuff. Now, Halogen are going to be producing 14 different versions of these, apparently, in various different liveries, with 4 tooling variations, so quite a complex old project there. Pre-orders are starting from £143.65. I reckon that's just the DCC ready version, and obviously, as always, if you want to get the DCC fitted or even DCC sound versions, they are going to be a little bit more, but they're expected in 2020, in the summer, I think between July and September 2020, so not really too far in the distant future, about a year or so to wait, which isn't too bad. And just looking at the early CAD images here, they do promise to be a big improvement on existing Class 45s on the market at the moment, which at this point are starting to age a little bit. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a great thing. It's always good that we've got brand new models coming out, updating the old, you know, getting us the ultimate modern standards of detail and sort of performance and quality and whatnot. So, yep, as far as I'm concerned, that's a very, very interesting project, and I'm very, very tempted to pre-order. If you are too, once again, there's a link in the description if you can find it. So, a little bit like Hornby, Oxford Rail, or Oxford Diecast, have also made their 2019 mid-year range announcements. And again, like Hornby, there's an awful lot to see, especially on the sort of diecast cars and things. So if you want to check out the range, once again, I will put a link in the description, and there's rather a lot of them there, so apologies if you're having to sift through them all. But I will just pick out some of the key model railway announcements. So we have, yet again, with the N7, we have, I've showed this in basically every news video, I think, over recent times, but there is going to be a new version of the N7 released. It's not blue, although they have been talking about that. It is a slightly more conventional livery of the BR with the lake crest, as you can see here, and it looks very smart to me, so I think for those that are BR modelers who want to take advantage of this fantastic model, that is very, very good news. There's also been a twin pack of ScotRail Mark 3A coaches, which has been announced. Quite interesting. Obviously not really my area of expertise, but they have been announced. And there's also a new variation of the popular Warwell wagon, this time with a Sherman tank on top of it, which looks very cool indeed. And of course there are an awful lot of people that like to model sort of World War I and World War II scenes on their layouts, and for those that's going to be very, very interesting indeed. And who knows, I might even pick one up, because I do like me a Sherman tank. And finally then, just a little bit of a heads up about some of the more major exhibitions and train fairs and swap meets and things that are going on around the country over the next month or so. So there's the Great Central Railway Swap Meet on Sunday, the 23rd of June. I think that is separate to the event that's going on this weekend, but again, if you're around there, that's going to be quite a big event, it looks like. There is the Exeter 2019 Model Railway Exhibition, which is taking place on Saturday the 29th and Sunday the 30th of June, so if you're around the Exeter area, that might be one to check out. There's also the Bluebell Model Railway Show, obviously the Bluebell Railway being quite a popular heritage railway. Same dates as the previous, 29th to the 30th of June. There's also the Cardiff Toy and Train Sale on Saturday the 6th of July. Once again, that seemed to be quite a big event, so if you're from Cardiff, that might be worth checking out. And on the same day, in Newcastle upon Tyne, there is the Newcastle upon Tyne Toy, Train and Sci-Fi Fair, which also sounds very, very interesting, especially if you're interested in all of toys, trains and sci-fi. So that's pretty cool, and I think that more or less finishes off this model railway news session. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about that. Not all sort of sunshine and butterflies this time, but all important to know nonetheless, I would say. Let me know down in the comments what you thought was most interesting or what you're most looking forward to. And finally, as always, if you're a manufacturer or an event organizer and you'd like to have a little shout out in one of these videos, do get in touch. There's an email address down in the description, and I will talk to you again before very long. All right, cheers everybody, take care.